Thank you. Fellow Californians, I live in the same blue state you live. But you might be a tiny, teensy bit lonelier than even I am in Southern California. So I want you to know I salute you, that you have maintained your senses of humor, your good cheer, and have somehow continued the fight, and it is a fight, which I will explain tonight. There are a few things I just want to say at the very outset. First, thank you, Erica. Second, I want to thank my local station, AM 860, The Answer. Mike Shields, would you stand? The station manager is here, and give him an ovation, because where are you? There he is, all the way in the back. You can hear me. If you don't, you can hear me every day here, obviously on AM 860, and more people apparently do, because I know from my board that I'm getting more and more calls from this area. And since it's on about 200 stations around the country, that means that a lot of people are listening if certain cities do seem to come through on a regular basis. So that's a wonderful thing to find out. You're not alone. This is actually not insignificant for me to tell you. We who believe in America, who don't believe that it is racist, xenophobic, sexist, intolerant, homophobic, transphobic, but think it is the greatest society that humans have ever in our flawed state made, we are not alone. Why people living in such a blessed place would consider it so awful is a very important question to try to figure out. How do you live in such a decent place and think it's so indecent? That is a character flaw in these people. It is a psychological flaw and a character flaw. If you think America stinks, you stink. If you think good is bad, then there's something wrong with you. Either your moral compass is broken or our moral compass is broken. We can't both be right. So either your perception of a good place as bad is sick, or our perception of a bad place as good is sick. Okay? Simple. One of us has a broken character, a broken moral compass. That's how big the rift is. Second introductory comment that I would like to make is to thank Liberty Forum for sponsoring the evening. And though I am not paid by them or work for them, you should join everything that is doing good. That is my belief. Just help everybody who is doing good work. I had dinner tonight prior to coming here, which really rendered this a particular highlight trip for me. Aside from politics and religion, my great passion is classical music. I've had the opportunity of even conducting orchestras on at least a dozen occasions, most recently at the Walt Disney Concert Hall, which got national attention because a conservative conducted the Santa Monica Symphony Orchestra. It made a big New York Times feature. You could read about it because they did, it was sort of a hatchet job on me. And by the way, it's a very important little thing, then I'm going to tell you about the dinner. It's a very important little insight I'd like to share with you. There are 70 members of the Santa Monica Symphony Orchestra. And I would venture to say the vast majority of them share the views of people in Santa Monica, which is very much like San Francisco on the left. 63 of the 70 had no problem playing for me, though I am a very well-known conservative. They all knew who was coming. 7 refused to play. That was it. So what was the article in the New York Times about? How controversial my conducting the Santa Monica Symphony Orchestra was. But to show you how dishonest the article is, wouldn't an honest article be, prominent conservative comes to major liberal city in America, one of the major liberal cities, and 63 of the 70 orchestra members play for him. Isn't that the story? But not in the New York Times. The story was how controversial it was. 7 out of 70 is 10%. 1 out of 10 people refused to play for me. That was the story. And by the way, not insignificantly, the leaders of that were professors at UCLA, which is nearly all of our universities are moral wastelands. And they, by the way, what I do always when people attack me, so one of them, a professor of history or whatever, said that I was all sorts racist, and the usual six herbs: sexist, intolerant, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, racist, bigoted. So I invited him on my show to tell millions of people why I'm sexist, intolerant, xenophobic, homophobic, racist, and bigoted. And he came on. And you should get a recording of that show. And it's both a strength and a weakness. I really am a nice guy. And I don't even like humiliating fools. And so I didn't humiliate him at all, especially he came with his wife. I certainly wasn't going to humiliate him. And that wasn't my task. I wanted to clarify how it is you could think these things of me, because there's no substance to it. I don't have a racist bone in my body. Racism, aside from evil, is stupid. The idea that race matters is stupid. That's all. And I don't have any stupid notions. I may be flawed. I'm flawed like everyone. Not maybe. I am flawed. But I'm not stupid. You have to be stupid to believe race is important. The whole point is it's insignificant. Does God know race? Was Adam black? Was Adam white? Was Adam Hispanic? That's the whole teaching. That's why the Bible is so great. We all come from Adam and Eve, who had no race. Anyway, so that gives you an idea of how things are reported. Major controversy: 1/10 of the orchestra in Santa Monica doesn't come to play for a conservative who's conducting, and that in and of itself on their part was disgusting. It was more important for them to fail. They begged other members not to show up for me. I raised the entire year's income for that orchestra that night. Okay? That is what I did. I didn't take one nickel. It was more important to hurt their orchestra than play for a conservative. That's the scummy thing typical of the left. That is what governs their thinking. So I had dinner tonight with 5 or 6 members of the San Francisco Symphony. And I can tell you, as one who knows a lot about music and a lot about orchestras, one of the greatest orchestras, not just in America, but on our planet. You have a magnificent, magnificent orchestra here, as you know. And 2 of them showed up with Prager U t-shirts on. And I asked them if it's okay. I did not say a word about this on the radio. I didn't want to hurt them. They're totally okay with my announcing it. They are here now with the members of the San Francisco Symphony. Please stand. I love you guys. I really do. I love you very much. It was such an honor to be with them. They kept telling me what an honor it was to be with me, and I keep pinching myself. You've got to be kidding. It was really terrific. And you see, we exist. We're all over the place. But the left tries to shut us up. That is why Google, which owns YouTube, has put 80 of the 400 Prager University videos on its restricted list, which is supposed to be for 2 things: violence and pornography. So one of the videos is by Alan Dershowitz, liberal, Hillary Clinton supporting professor of law at Harvard, speaking on Israel's historical legal origins. 5 minutes on Israel's legal origins. It's on the restricted list. You know why? Anything pro-Israel gets on the restricted list. Anything pro-America gets on the restricted list. They're vile, folks. They are vile. That's why we've sued them. And if we have to pursue it to the Supreme Court, we'll do it. By the way, as conservatives, meaning we want to conserve American values, we have no problem. If you own a private business and you don't want to allow X or Y to be expressed, that's fine. We understand that. But they don't, but they can't have it, they want it both ways. So we have a second suit that they are misrepresenting themselves. If they announced Google, YouTube is a left-wing organization, there is no room for conservative thought, we would drop our lawsuit. Because then you are being honest. But you're frauds because you claim to be open and you are a closed universe. Just like Berkeley and UCLA and Yale and Stanford and all the others. The difference between, I've said this for years, the difference between a Christian seminary and an American university is this. They both indoctrinate, but the Christian seminary admits it. That's the one great difference. The Christian seminary acknowledges our task is to produce a committed Christian. The university should say our task is to produce a committed leftist. That would end the issue. Parents are being sold a fraud, just like Google, YouTube is a fraud. Berkeley is a fraud, University of California, San Francisco, they're all frauds. They claim to be open and they're closed, utterly closed. By the way, they've been closed since I went to college. Alan Bloom wrote in I think the 70s or 80s, a professor at University of Chicago, The Closing of the American Mind. It was about the American university. This is not new. I was at the School of International Affairs at Columbia University where I did my graduate work at the Russian Institute. My field is unbelievable. It was like divinely ordained that I would study leftism in graduate school. It so worked out great for me because having read Pravda in Russian, I was totally prepared to read the New York Times in English. It was perfect. I really. By the way, there is not much of a difference. No, this is not funny. I'm not being cute. I'm not exaggerating. There is not much of a difference. You will get straight news in the New York Times if it's about an earthquake in Peru. It's very reliable. No, I'm not joking. I read it every day. But if it has anything to do with left-right, it's a fraud. And its opinion pages are Pravda-like. They are truly Pravda-esque. They have like 30 columnists, not one is pro-Trump. Half this country is pro-Trump. But they can't find one columnist for the New York Times. But then don't claim you're open. I don't mind if you want to say the leftist New York Times, it ends my issues with you. They deny it. That's what drives me crazy. As your universities. Okay. So let me I won't say nutshell. I do have a few minutes here, but still is a nutshell because the issue is so enormous. I want to explain to you one way of looking at what I call the Civil War in the United States. And I've said this for years, there's a civil war in the U.S. Thank God it is almost completely not violent. I pray to God it remains that way. However, the division in the United States is as great as it was during the Civil War. In fact, in some ways, it is greater. That division was over slavery, which is huge. I'm not going to understate that in any way. However, many Southerners believed very similarly to many Northerners on other issues. The left and right agree on nothing. Nothing. The gap is cavernesque. It is canyonesque. It is like the Grand Canyon. It is unbridgeable. The gulf is unbridgeable. And I would like to explain, I have many ways of explaining this gulf. Tonight what I will do with you is I will take what I call the American Trinity, which is a term I have coined to explain America, because We have not explained America properly. This is the crisis. I was just on a panel. Oh yes, I was on a panel with some of my colleagues of Salem Radio, Sebastian Gorka, and myself, and Larry Elder, and a couple of local talk show hosts, and we were on a panel, and the MC asked, "What's the greatest problem facing America?" We didn't know what the questions would be, so but I had my answer. I was called on first for whatever reason, and I had my answer. The greatest problem in America is that Americans have forgotten what America stands for. If we hadn't forgotten, we wouldn't be in the crisis we are. And in this regard, I have often noted my generation, arguably the most narcissistic in American history, the baby boomers, was produced by the greatest generation. Now, I've never accepted that title because I think there were a number of great generations in American history. Americans who fought on the right side in the Civil War, Americans who fought in World War I and the Korean War. These were great generations too. The Revolutionary War. But it was a great generation. There's no question. This generation that went over to Europe and the Pacific to fight for liberty and to fight for America. But this greatest generation produced the worst generation, mine. And obviously not all members of my generation, but as a generation, these are the ones that shattered the universities, that are ruining the high schools, that have ruined the value system of America. And obviously pass this on to the next generation and then the millenniums. But how did that happen? What did they get wrong? I knew this when I was young. I began lecturing at 21. I have a very strange life because you don't lecture at 21. Or you do, but you do to your friends. But I did to audiences. But that was because I was sent to the Soviet Union, which is its own amazing story, but not for now. Anyway, I began lecturing and I said, you know what? Our parents' generation, it wasn't true for my parents, but my parents' generation, they say, I remember I said this in my early 20s, so I knew it then. They say, we're going to give our kids, that's the baby boomers, everything we didn't have. This was the way they phrased it. And they did. But as I said then, the problem is they didn't give us what they did have. They had God and they had America, and they didn't give God or America over to my generation. They gave us affluence, they gave us freedom, they gave us things, they gave us a college education, which was a mistake in and of itself. But they didn't give us what made them great. That's the problem with the greatest generation. That is why very often people will say to me, because of my radio work and because of Prager U, well, aren't you preaching to the choir? And for all of my life, I have had one answer to that question. No, a lot of people who are not part of the choir listen. But it's okay if even only the choir is listening because they forgot the melody. That is why it is so important to preach to the choir. If the choir doesn't get the melody right, we're doomed. Then there's no concert. There's no concert, folks. We've lost the music to America. We've lost the music to what we stand for. And this is the crisis, I said in that panel. I said it much shorter then. But this is the crisis. We have not taught Americans what it means to be an American. So I would like to share with you the way I teach it and show you how the left is at war with all three of the components of what I call the American Trinity. I discovered the American Trinity in, I would say when I was about 40. And I was taking stuff out of my pocket, getting ready to go to bed, and I looked at the coins in my pocket. Some of you will recall when people did use cash, you would pay for things and get change. Some of you remember this. For the millenniums here, coins are little things, round things. Anyway, every coin in America, and for that matter, every bill, has on it the American Trinity. I didn't make it up, but I looked at the coin and said, oh my God, it's been staring me in my face since I was a child, and I could read, and I never realized it. Liberty, in God we trust, e pluribus unum. There you go. I didn't make it up. It's on every coin. That's the American Trinity. The left loathes all three. That's why the Civil War is so huge. The Gulf is so huge. It has declared war on all three components of the American Trinity. So let me explain them, and let me explain the war against them. Let me begin with liberty. One way of summarizing the American crisis is by putting it in these words. It is a battle between the French Revolution and the American Revolution. American Revolution 1776, essentially, around there, took longer than a year. Wasn't overnight as it was in France, as it were. 1789, 13 years later. The French, our motto, as put in the Declaration of Independence, is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Everything comes in threes. Christians here will be happy to know that. Everything comes in threes. So we have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And what was their motto? Liberty, equality, fraternity. We never placed equality as an aim of the society. All men are created equal is stated in the Declaration of Independence. That is a given, that every human being is equal in God's eyes, and every human being must be equal before the law. This is clear. This is a given subset or overset, if you will, of the American value system. People are created equal. But equality is not an American aim. It is a French revolutionary aim, not an American revolutionary aim. And I want you to understand that this battle alone can explain almost everything. The left loves equality. We don't. We love liberty. They are in conflict. If people are free, some people will make more money than others. It is not possible to attain equality and keep liberty. It is not possible. You will have to confiscate people's wealth in order for people to be equal monetarily. Is that correct? Is that obvious? If you allow liberty, shortstops will make 100 times more than teachers. Is that fair? What does that even mean? Is it fair? I don't even know. That's a leftist question. Is it fair? Yes, it is fair. Is it ideal? In heaven, teachers make more than shortstops. Okay? But every attempt to make heaven on earth produces hell. So I don't want to produce heaven on earth. I just want to produce a place where people don't hurt each other. I just want to produce a free place where people are basically decent. Which is what America is, a free place where people are basically decent. When I was invited to Berkeley last year, and they were going to have big demonstrations and all this stuff, so I decided I would do something different at Berkeley. I would debate left-wing students. Just have them come on stage the entire time. We'll have a dialogue. So they picked two of their best, and you could watch it. It's on YouTube till it's restricted. And so I have a motto. I prefer clarity to agreement. By the way, if you are a member of a married couple, I suggest that every time you have a disagreement, go for clarity over agreement. Just say, honey, before we fight, let's just figure out where we differ. And if, by the way, a couple that can do that is already a good sign that's, there might be too much passion, but it's a great idea. Let's clarify where we differ. So that's what I did with the left-wing students. Let's clarify where we differ. And my last question of the evening to them was, do you believe people are basically good? You believe human nature is good? And they said yes, which is exactly what I expected them to say. And I looked at them and I said, that is among the most absurd beliefs a human can have. So I would like to tell you why you have it. Because you live in America, where people are basically good. Not human nature, just Americans. Americans are I've been to 130 countries. I have been abroad every year of my life since I was 20. I lived abroad, and let me tell you, we're a nice people. I mean, I'll never forget, I gave a lecture in Nice, France, and we were, the group that I lectured to went to a very fancy restaurant, which is probably redundant in France, but anyway, we did. And it was a very pretty waitress serving us who spoke English, but I speak French, and I much prefer speaking a foreign language in a foreign country just to practice. But as soon as I started speaking, I realized her English is definitely better than my French. So I gave up, and then I said, so I asked her in English, how come you speak such good English? She said, because I lived in America for 2 years. I said, oh, so I have a question to ask you, I said. And I promise you, I don't care what your answer is. Don't worry about hurting my feelings. They won't be. I'm simply curious what your answer is. What's the biggest difference between French people and American people? Without hesitating, she said, Americans are much nicer. It was very interesting. We are. It's true. What drives me crazy when I'm in Minnesota, you know, there's a concept of Minnesota nice. So how do nice people vote for hate-filled people? This is the problem in America. It's like I'm Jewish, and I tell my relatives, 99% of whom are liberal, I say, if you would only preach what you practice, they live utterly conservative lives and then vote left. See, the standards that it would never occur to my relatives that you have babies before you get married. But if we advocate that everybody have babies after they get married, we're called racist. or at least judgmental. But they would never do that. None of my relatives had babies before getting married. It would never occur to them. You marry, then it's not right to a kid. A kid should have a mother and father in their life. So if we say yes, and the biggest problem in the black community is a lack of fathers, racist. But you all have fathers in your lives. Even if you get divorced, you have a father in your life. Anyway, so I said to them, you think people are basically good because you're American. Because people are pretty good here. That's the problem. Naivete in adults is a sin. Naivete in children is excusable. Time to grow up. Human nature is not basically good. I get so angry at my fellow Jews on this. I wrote for the Jewish Journal for I don't know, 10 years, a column. Do you know the column that, all of my columns got hate, but the column that I think got the most hate was when I wrote People Are Not Basically Good. And so many of them, as I anticipated, quoted Anne Frank, because she wrote in her diary, the famous diary of Anne Frank, that still in all she thinks people are basically good. She was 15 when she wrote it. And Anne Frank is the symbol of the Holocaust. She's as close to Jewish saint as Jews will ever get. But she was 15. I don't get wisdom from 15-year-olds. The left gets wisdom from 15-year-olds because they have the wisdom of 15-year-olds. No, I mean that sincerely. You're laughing. See, you're laughing because you think I'm insulting them. I'm not insulting them. Why do they want the vote to go to 16-year-olds? Why did they want the vote to go to 18-year-olds? Because they are not wiser than 18-year-olds, so they don't understand why they should be deprived of the vote. They have as much wisdom as I do. Give them the vote. I don't believe any 18-year-old is as wise as I am. That hasn't been invented yet. If you think an 18-year-old is as wise as you, one of you is in trouble. There is something going on here. This is really bad. I didn't think I was wise at 18. It was then that they changed the vote, and I remember saying to my girlfriend at the time, why are they giving me the vote? I don't know anything. I had the wisdom to know I didn't deserve the vote. Michael Moore just announced, by the way, that we have to lower the age that you could run for president because Alexandria Octavia Cortez is 35. And wait, listen to his reasoning. The man's deep. He said, it's truly hilarious. Sebastian Gorka pointed this out, and I laughed in the car. He said, hey, listen, in those days, people lived to 38 and 40. To which Gorka said, so doesn't that argue for raising the age? If people were living to 38 and 40, that means they died 2 years on average after they could run. So we should have you should only be able to run today if you're 78 years old. By the way, that's happening apparently. It's the way things are working out. It really does seem that way. So I begin with liberty versus equality, and let me just tell you before I move to the other two members of the American Trinity, that more people were murdered, genocidally murdered, in the name of equality in the 20th century than in the name of anything else, including racism. That's how dangerous equality is as an aim. That is why the left hates the notion of a God who tells you what to do. There's nothing higher than me. My conscience is all that I need. There's no God and 10 commandments. I command me, no God. Know what the serpent said in the Garden of Eden? Eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil and you will be like God. People wanted to be like God from the beginning of history. They want to be their own gods. The idea that God is higher than me means that there's no equality. There is no God-man equality. On the left, they hate that notion. There is no parent-child equality on the right. The left hates that. Children are pals on the left. They do not like hierarchy unless they are in the driver's seat. Then they love it. But that's it. That's why, hey, when they slaughtered 20 to 40 million people in the Soviet Union, they all killed them in the name of being comrade, right? Comrade. And in the French Revolution, citizen. Everybody's a citizen. We're gonna chop your head off with a guillotine, citizen. You're our equal, but we'll kill you. That's why Orwell wrote, everybody's created equal except some are more equal than others. All of it is about the equality chant is frightening. It should scare the living daylights out of you. And now equality has been bastardized into sameness. Male-female equality has now meant male-female sameness. Indeed, there is no such thing as male-female. Number 2, in God we trust. Ultimately, the issue is God, and I tell this to secular conservatives who don't understand this. I love secular conservatives. They're on my side. They're my allies. They're my friends, but they don't get it. They don't understand that in God we trust is as much part of America as liberty. You can't have a free society in the American vision if you don't have God. That is why the Liberty Bell, first of all, it's not the equality bell. Okay? No, that's very important. That is very important. It's a Liberty Bell, not an equality bell. The Liberty Bell has a verse from the Bible. That's right, because that's where we get our freedom from. Because they understood we're not basically good people. So therefore, we're going to have a good society. You're going to have to either feel morally accountable either to the state or to God. And they wanted us to feel morally accountable to God so that the state be small Small state is unique to America. There is no other country that has small government as a value. Not one other on earth, including Canada, which is a wonderful country. Only America has wanted a small state. We are undoing the left is undoing the American Revolution, consciously. And that includes the God issue. The God issue is not just about freedom. It's about everything. God created man. You know, I'm working on a Bible commentary. I've never, in all my years of writing, asked people to buy a book of mine. I have too much pride. I will throw all my dignity aside. Please get my book, The Rationale Bible. It will be 5 volumes. The first came out. The second is coming out in a few months. The first is on Exodus. You have to understand the Bible to understand what is happening. And that we didn't teach every generation in American history learned the Bible at home, but not the baby boomers. Parents didn't open the Bible for their kids. They instead they watched TV. The family didn't get together to study the Old or New Testament. This is an example. God created Adam, that is the human being. Male and female, he created them. The only distinction God declares in the Bible, the only intrinsic distinction that matters is the male-female distinction. Race doesn't matter, ethnicity doesn't matter, nothing matters. That matters. You shatter the male-female distinction, you shatter the order that God has wanted to create for humanity. That's how big it is. We are undergoing the undoing of the Judeo-Christian bases of Western civilization when teachers are told, as they are all over America, do not call your kids, your students, boys and girls. We're talking 5-year-old students. Call them students. Do not impose a gender identity on them. I consider this generation to be child abused. If you are told you will choose your gender later, you are abusing that child. It is a celebration. If you can't celebrate your sex, that's a tragedy. There is a tiny, infinitesimally small number of humans who I believe have gender dysphoria. It is an illness. It is. That doesn't mean you're bad. Illness isn't a moral concept. Illness is illness. But they have denied it's ill. It's normal because it's not a binary thing, but it is a binary thing. They are undoing what it took so long for Christianity and Judaism to try to create in this world. It is an undoing of In God We Trust. It is a contempt for In God We Trust. One of the reasons they don't say the pledge is because it has one nation under God, and they always remind it, well, that was inserted in the 50s, and therefore, is it illegitimate? So what? What if it was inserted in the 1850s? They would still think it's illegitimate. Yes, it's one nation under God, or it won't be one nation, folks. It's either one nation under God, or it ain't one nation. And that brings me to the third one. E pluribus unum, from many one. This is the most successful, multi-ethnic, multiracial society in the history of mankind. You know, they tell us on the left, because they're not rigorous thinkers. They tell us, they're rigorous emoters. So they tell us, oh, our model is Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, the Scandinavian countries. They have big government, and they have universal medical care and universal free college and universal everything. That's our model. But they also say something else, don't they? Diversity is our strength. Except their models have no diversity. Did you know that? They're all 90% plus white Europeans in Denmark, Finland, Finland is 98%. And a few years ago, they were all 98%, except for the recent migrations of people from the Middle East. Maybe diversity is America's strength only because we were united with the other two, liberty and in God we trust. And because of e pluribus unum, and because we make you American. American has no color. America has no ethnicity. But if you drop American as an important identity, if you can't even make a proclamation in the government that English is our national language, how are you going to make unum out of pluribus? You can't. They are balkanizing America. That's why I worry about the future of this experiment. They want to undo the experiment. Diversity is strength only if you're united by a common identity. Multiple identities is not a strength. Multiple ethnicities is fine. Multiple races is fine. But only if you have a single identity. American. Today's Lincoln's birthday. 1% of America's youth today, of America's high school kids, knows it. We're lucky if 1% knows it. I don't know if 1 out of 100 knew it. I grew up in a Jewish parochial school, and we had a Lincoln's birthday play and a Washington's birthday play, and everybody memorized Nathan Hale, I regret that I have but one life to give for my country. And that was in an ethnic parochial school in Brooklyn, New York. We celebrated even the concept of melting pot while we were learning half the day in Hebrew. But we knew we were American. Superman was American, right? Truth, justice, and the American way was his Trinity. Everybody has a Trinity, even he. And do you know, I've told this on the radio, about 10 years ago, the Superman comic strip, which is now run by leftists, it was founded by liberals. Liberals loved America. Leftists loathe America. One of the many differences between them, but liberals don't know it. Liberals are sweet, but not bright. If they were bright, they would understand what Alan Dershowitz understands. His enemy is the left, not the right. The enemy of liberalism is not conservatism. The enemy of liberalism is leftism. That liberals don't know that is pathetic. Leftists run Superman comics, and now what? Superman announced in front of the United Nations in his comic strip, he is renouncing his American citizenship. Yep. He's now a citizen of the world. Yeah. That, in a nutshell, tells you what the fight is about. I am a citizen of the United States. I am a human being. I care about what happens outside of America. But I expect Bulgarians to think first about Bulgaria. That's good. That's healthy. I want you to first think about your family. That's good. I want you to care about my family, but I want you to first think about your family. It would be very odd to me if you said, no, Dennis, I think about your family as much as my own. I would think you had a very, very inordinately dysfunctional family. Every family is dysfunctional, but some are more dysfunctional than others. By the way, one of the reasons I love God and the Bible, the book of Genesis, my Rationale Bible volume coming out in May, is on Genesis, and I note, it is a gift from God, since I believe the Bible is from God. It is a gift from God that every family in Genesis is highly dysfunctional. So if you think you got it bad, the first two brothers, one killed the other. Any of your children throw any of your other children into a pit and then into slavery? I'll bet not. You're doing pretty good compared to Joseph's family. So that's the way it is from many one. That's the battle. One final word. I said the left loathes America. It certainly loathes the American value system, which is what I just told you. I didn't make it up. In God we trust, e pluribus unum, and liberty. But here's proof that they loathe America. 5 days before Barack Obama, then senator, was elected president of the United States in the year 2008, he announced, "We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America." My dear friends, it is not possible to love what you wish to fundamentally transform. It is not possible. It's not an attack. It is not possible. If any of you told me, if any of you men told me, I love my wife, but I'd like to fundamentally transform her. Is it fair to say that if I were dubious, that would be legit? If a woman said, "I love my husband, but I would like to fundamentally transform him," you would think that was not a statement of love. Of course they don't love it. You don't love what you want to fundamentally transform. They do want to fundamentally transform America. We conservatives just want to improve it because it's a good place. And it's hard, given human nature, to make a good place. Thank you very much.
A couple times, I think you mentioned Alan Dershowitz, and certainly I think this audience is familiar with him. Could you perhaps tell us why he backs Hillary Clinton?
Oh, that is a great question, so let me tell you.
Thank you.
Whoever wrote that, I would give a hug.
No, that was me, spontaneous.
That was you?
Yeah.
All right. Hey. I'm good for my word.
I'm killing
Boy, was I
time.
lucky. Okay. So I have dialogued with Alan Dershowitz in Los Angeles, Miami, and New York, and he will appear in the film Adam Carolla and I are making, which is coming out this year. No Safe Spaces. You'll have to watch it. It's funny and sad about what's happening on the college campus. But anyway, that's exactly what I asked him. First it was Professor Dershowitz, then we got close, then it became Alan. So Alan, I don't understand. You understand the damage the left is doing. So he would say, well, I still believe in liberalism. Okay, that's fine. That's fine with me. Liberals who are against the left have my admiration because it takes courage, and he's lost a lot of friends. He truly has. I don't have an answer. I don't have a coherent answer why he would back Hillary Clinton, to be perfectly honest. I think it's emotional, and I'm not saying that derogatorily. He's bright, he's deep, he's courageous, he has all the good traits. But I do believe, first of all, he knows her so many years, and I'm sure he would have had a high position, and I'm not saying he was selfish in doing it. But, when you know somebody, ironically, when you know someone, you can easily lose perspective. And I think he did in her case. But your question is completely accurate. Let me put it to you this way. He does us a lot more good staying a Democrat and a liberal than he does if he became a conservative Republican.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, this is a question that comes up a lot in our sessions because I think a lot of our members are upset about it, and I'm sure you have a few comments. What can we do about the indoctrination in our public schools? And I know you only have like a couple minutes.
What can we do about the indoctrination in the public schools? Okay, this is a very difficult question. So here are a number of options. One obvious one is to fight. But my own sense is that the battle in our schools is somewhat lost. The teachers and the teachers' unions and the principals are so overwhelmingly on the left, and it would take so much courage for a teacher not to be. Courage is the rarest of all the good traits. There are many kind people. There are very few courageous ones. So I tell parents with young kids, my first recommendation is homeschooling. I would not send my child to a school that denied that my child was a boy or a girl. That's frankly too much. They're going crazy. And the fewer that go to the schools, the less funding they get, and ultimately it'll just rupture. And it should rupture. Non-violently, obviously, but it should rupture. I raised my kids, and I'm an oddball father. I told my kids I didn't give a damn about their grades from the earliest age. And by the way, they lived up to my recommendation. You're probably waiting. Believe it or not, they were all on the honors list. No. They got the grades fitting my approach. But in any event, I told them I only care about your character. In the long run of life is a marathon, not a sprint. In the long run of life, your character will determine everything, and your grades will determine nothing. That's true. I continue to hold that. So this notion, well, they got to go to school because I got to get them into a great college, it's baloney. It's just sheer baloney. On your kids having to go to a great college, let me tell you something. This has been very interesting to me. I've been on radio for 30 plus years. I have been asked everything, because I talk about everything, and I talk about my own life as well. I've even asked, on occasion, personal questions. Do you know the only question that I recall never being asked? It's an amazing thing when you think about it. No one has ever asked me what college did I go to. Is that interesting? By the way, none of you know or care. No, Columbia? Yeah, that was, I just mentioned it because I had to mention where I studied leftism. And that was graduate school. You don't know what college I went to. That's right. And I'm not telling. Kidding. Okay, just being silly. But anyway, why did they not? Because I've earned their respect. They don't give a damn. If I'd announce on the radio, folks, the truth is I never went to college. They'd say, oh, how do you like that? Guy's self-taught. More power to him. Yeah, I studied in a garage. Right? Isn't that where Gates developed Microsoft? So if it's good for Gates, it's good for Prager. I mean, but so this notion they have to go to a prestigious school is a very bad idea. By the way, often the more prestigious, the more closed-minded. So it's not a necessarily great idea. Anyway, you'll have to decide as a parent or grandparent if you have any impact. But I am a big enthusiast over homeschooling. And that is one possible answer. Then the question comes about college. I think almost every kid should take a year off between high school and college. The more mature you are before you go to college, the less likely you are to be brainwashed. You should not. The difference between kindergarten and college is the age of the kinder. That is the only difference. If you never have any life, but you've gone to school from 5 to 24, there's something wrong about your life. It's misshapen. That is not a full life. That is an empty life. The only benefit, well, at least the only time I'm fairly sure that no harm is done at college is if you're lucky enough that your kid was drunk for 4 years. I don't even drink, and I welcome college intoxication.
That's good. Well, I'm going to indulge myself a little bit too in the spirit of the San Francisco Symphony. I've got a card here, and we, the Liberty Forum, we're always trying to get young people more involved in what we're doing, and we have a team group here. It's called Club Z, and we'll have them stand up. This is the Zionist group, Youth Zionist group. So, all right, you guys,
Hi, Club
wave
Z,
your hands.
how you doing?
All right, stand
Great to
up.
see you.
Oh, look, that's a nice group of them. Thanks for coming.
Hey, by the way, you guys in Club Z, do you see PragerU videos? Okay, good.
Okay.
By the way, that is part of the answer. Do you know we had 1 billion views last year at Prager University?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. This will really have you applaud. 65% of the views are people under 35 years of age. That's big deal.
Okay. This is a little bit of another local flavor. Here in Silicon Valley, we have a growing trend of people who identify as libertarians. What should the relationship be between Republicans and libertarians?
That's for the libertarian to decide. I mean, one assumes a libertarian who thinks practically, and if you don't think practically, you're not thinking morally. Moral means what works. That's the question. If it has to work, it has to make a society better. I assume virtually every libertarian would be a Republican, but not all are. Some vote Libertarian Party in order to help the Democrats win. I have no respect for these people. I don't understand why you would ever think that way. It is better to have a leftist than to have a flawed conservative. Are you out of your mind? No, this is childlike thinking. You know, Churchill hated Bolshevism, hated it. He was the first Western leader to say communism is the evil of the future. But he supported Stalin in fighting Hitler. Because because he was the lesser of two evils at that time. Remember, folks, the less evil, the more good. That's how it works. It's utopian, and all utopian thinking, that's why religion is valuable, at least some religions. And our religions, all of our utopian visions are eschatological, are in the hereafter, after life or after a Messiah. There is no vision of utopia in this world, in Judaism or Christianity. You can make the world better, but if you try to make it perfect, you will create hell.
Okay. This is a thought-provoking one. Why did the Trinity arise in America and not someplace else?
That is another great question, and I don't think there's a perfect answer to that. I would say that the strain of Christian who came to the United States was different, was rejecting much of Christianity that was in Europe. I tell Jews, my fellow Jews, this all the time, who were, still harbor great suspicions about Christians because of Christian anti-Semitism in history, which is extensive. But I always tell them, that was in Europe. America's Christians gave you the most blessed place a Jew has ever lived in the history of the Jewish people outside of Israel. That's a fact. I love America's Christians. That's why I hate to see churches closing in America. As a Jew, I hate to see the churches closing, not just as an American. So I don't know the full answer. That is a really, really powerful question. And I would have to argue, and this is against my own thinking often, because I very rarely invoke God's intervention, because I don't know God, and I don't know when he intervenes. But it does seem to me that he intervened in the generation that made this country in 1776. The constellation of giants in one time, in one place, is close to unique. Maybe the last time were the Hebrew prophets. That's how much I venerate. And you know what? Do you know how the average American young person sees these people? As white, European, sexist, racist males. That's truly sick.
How much time do we have? I'm
10
conscious
minutes.
of your
We have
10 minutes. Great.
7 minutes. 7
minutes. All right. Well, that's really good. Well, we'll get a little lighter here. Someone wants to know.
You mean it hasn't been light?
No, that's all serious. If you could invite 5 dead or alive people to your house for dinner, who would they be? Or just leave a couple, and why?
Haydn, Bach, Beethoven, Bruckner, and Mahler. All right? I'm asked that question all the time. It may reflect really poorly on me. I don't have an answer. I get so much satisfaction. This is part of the reason maybe I'm happy, and I wrote a book on happiness, and I have a happiness hour every week. I really am a happy person, and I've worked on it. But I know I'm happy because I'm so happy with the friends in my life. I never think I have had Sabbath lunch, Shabbat lunch, Saturday afternoon with the same 2 couples for 27 years every Saturday.
That's nice.
27 years.
Nice.
And I never think when I'm there, I really wish Napoleon were at lunch. I feel bereft. Where's Aristotle when you need him? So I'm really happy with people in my life, and it's a very legit question. Anyway, I'm not sure, I don't know what I would ask that I don't have an answer to. I mean, I feel like I know Moses. What am I going to ask? At what point did you get truly disgusted with the Jews? Because I know my answer. What is his answer going to be? This, by the way, is one of the reasons I believe in the divinity of the Torah and of the Hebrew Bible, is that it is unique in how awfully it depicts the people of its book. If Jews wrote the Bible and not not ultimately come from God, the Jews would have been depicted much more positively. It's a very powerful argument I have for its divinity. Okay.
All right. Well, we have a couple questions, I think, from some of the teenagers or younger people in the audience. Is what can they do if they feel that they need to shut up at school based on their thoughts? And if they're not being homeschooled, and that's not an option,
Right.
any advice you can give them?
Yes, I get this question. This is another great one. Parents will call my show and say, what should I tell my daughter? For whatever reason, I remember with a daughter, obviously it applies identically to a son. So my daughter knows that if she speaks up or writes a paper from a conservative point of view, she'll get a worse grade. This was my answer to that mother and other mothers who've called in on that same subject. I can never tell you, and I won't tell you what to tell your daughter, but I will tell you what I would like to say, and that is this. This is what I would tell your daughter, and I'm not saying you can. I want you to not feel, I'm not morally giving you a hard time, but I would say to my child, if you compromise on your values for a grade in college, when will you stop compromising on your values?
All right, maybe the last one. What discussion could be complete? Would you like to throw in your 2 cents on the Democratic primary?
Yes. One is more impressive than the next. May they multiply. May there be many, many of them. I am not, by the way, I am a very big realist, which is very rare for a happy person, because realists are not usually optimists, and I'm not a big optimist. I'm not. I know how fragile goodness is. And ironically, it's particularly as a Jew, the most cultivated country in the world, the most cultured country in the world built gas chambers after it gave us Beethoven and Mozart and Goethe and so on. I know how fragile civilization is. And any Jew who doesn't is an idiot. Anyone who doesn't is an idiot, but especially Jews. So I'm not optimistic or pessimistic, but I fight, and I will explain why in a moment. But I can say this, which is somewhat optimistic. They have gone over the top. I mean, anyone who's not leftist and who reads the Green New Deal, where we will take trains rather than airplanes, because airplanes use carbon, fossil fuel, we're entering the realm of lunacy, of just lunacy. Every home in America will be transformed into a solar a place for energy. The whole thing is a bad joke. It is, as I said, I have a little witticism. I said, if you're religious and you say the world is coming to an end, they call you a fanatic. If you're secular and you say the world is coming to an end, they call you an environmentalist. So based on the world will be destroyed in 12 years, this genius from Queens has informed us. Is it the Bronx or Queens? I think Queens. Okay. And anyway, what is happening in Virginia, I quoted the Bible. There's a great verse in Numbers, the 4th book, which is one I'm working on now, in fact. Eretz ochelet yoshveha, that it was a land that devoured its own inhabitants. That is what is happening in Virginia. Everybody's a racist. Everybody's guilty upon the first charge, no matter when it happened, no matter who makes the charge. So now they're eating up their own. It's inevitable. This is what happened in the French Revolution, what happened in the Russian Revolution. Stalin purged all the communists. The left eats its own. It's like a shark. It's a devouring machine, leftism. And it devours its own just as readily as the enemy. Virginia is an example of a land that is devouring its own. I will end by telling you why, even if in times of pessimism, and I was pessimistic on Election Day of 2016, I was. And I thought this could really mean the end of the America that I know. And I believe that might have happened, not if Hillary Clinton won, if any Democrat won. I don't care about Hillary Clinton. She means nothing to me. I don't like her, but it doesn't matter. Even if if a nice Democrat does as much damage as a corrupt Democrat. Okay, just understand that. Nice doesn't matter in leadership roles. It matters in daily life. But this is what keeps me going. It was my visit to Normandy. And I saw all the crosses of these 22-year-olds and 19-year-olds. And I made a vow, it's many years ago. All these young guys died for America, died to keep America free. The least I could do was live to keep America free. No one's asking me to face a Nazi machine gun. I have to do that even if I don't think I'll win. Nobody fights wars only if they think they'll win. The guys who rushed Normandy Beach peed in their pants because they thought they might get torn apart by Nazi machine guns. They weren't optimistic that they're going to live. They hoped they'd live. You fight even if you don't know you'll win. If you only fight if you think you'll win, then who's going to fight? So you've got to fight, folks. We owe it to our kids, to our parents, to the founders, to the world for that matter, because this is the greatest experiment that has ever been tried. And now on one happy, funny note, talking about the election of 2016, I have actually told both my sons, you know, I was really, really happy the day you boys were born. But I was happier the day Trump won. Thank you, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dennis Prager.
Thank you all. God bless you. Thank you.